topic, downtown Rochester at an inflection point. We are meeting downtown. Those of you who have been in Rochester for a while know there's been some significant changes in the last few years. There is a trend line. We can accept that trend line sort of gradually moving in one direction, or we can accelerate it in a more positive direction. That's the inflection point we're at, I believe, at this moment. And this is an opportunity for us. And I chose tonight to feature three people who are major contributors to what's going on in our already change agents. So give me a moment. I'm going to wonk out a little bit. Who knows Alexis de Tocqueville, who was a history major, read this great historical political philosopher, someone who admired the US, was fascinated with it, and came here and spent time in the 1830s. And he ended up writing two volumes on democracy in America. And he found out this country, he anticipated, had figured out the riddle of good government. And he discovered it's pretty absent and was fascinated with what was happening here in this country all the way back after France experienced all their tumult, revolution and all. And one quote sticks with me, and he said, "The health of a democratic society may be measured by the quality of functions performed by the private sector." So I thought we'd explore this tonight, the relationship between the private sector and the public sector. I think we all form opinions about the public sector. It does play a critical role, not suggesting we eliminate it. Then I also wanted to reflect recent incidents reminded me of a quote I used to keep on my work desk for years, and is attributed to the legendary Speaker of the House, mentor to LBJ, Samuel Rayburn. And he said, "Any jackass can knock down a barn. It takes a carpenter to build one." So we have three carpenters in this room. Well, in the room, many more. We have three up here on our panel. We have three innovators. We have three products of New York's finest institutions of higher education. We have three members of the private sector. 501c3 is a private entity, right? We have three different generations. I think you and I are probably sort of the same generation. Then you. No, you're not. I did my research. And then, probably more importantly, we have three moms. And let's not underestimate the role a mother plays. You both are proud mothers. All three of you are proud mothers. And yeah, let's hear it for the moms. So I want to start with you, Suzanne. I know one of your partners in the endeavor we're featuring today is here. I just want to note you had a long career in the for-profit sector for a while, and you launched Hinge Neighbors several years ago. What is Hinge Neighbors, and why does it exist?
Well, Hinge Neighbors is a 501(c)(3), and my partner in crime, and in looking forward to what we can do with the Interloop North, is Sean Dunwoody. So we, yeah, it's great. We, so we, normally he's the one who's speaking. I am not the person, but I think that probably you talk about the youth, and we're building for the youth. That's exactly what we're doing and why I'm involved. Hinge Neighbors was formed because Sean and I had run a campaign together, and we found that we really enjoyed working together. And we said, this kind of energy doesn't go to waste. And Sean said, I want to do something about the Interloop, where we know that the people north of the Interloop, the people south of the Interloop have voice. And how are we going to do that? If we don't do something, who will? That's how we started. So it's really about equity. It's about changing the thoughts about what two things, that One is that the inner loop is a national model. I don't think that you all understand how much of a model it is. We belong to an organization called the Freeway Fighters, and they look to Rochester to say, what did you do? How do you do it? What's good about it? What's not so good about it? And that, I think, is really what we don't always think about, is Rochester setting precedents. And also, we have an opportunity to actually right some of the wrongs that were done and to make sure that no more wrong is done. What am I talking about? The inner loop was formed, it ripped through neighborhoods, it destroyed streets, it destroyed buildings, it destroyed immigrants, black, brown, anybody that wasn't what I am. So I think we really have an opportunity to say, how can we do this better than we've ever done it before? How do we involve people? So it is the north of the neighborhood. We felt that we could work together because we represent both sides of the neighborhood. I live in Grove Place. I live downtown, and it's not known for suffering fools. We are a very active neighborhood, and we're all, fairly well-to-do people who come down and said, here's where we want to be. To the north of us, we have people who are, and it's 14605, which I am living in, and it's known as some of the poorest neighborhoods in the whole nation. So what do? We make sure things are happening. So we've done a lot of work to get people involved. We've talked to people people began talking to us to say, you tell them, and we would say, no, we're going to help you tell what you really want to know. And what is your story? Why is it important? It's important to change the whole thinking about the word reparation. The reparation, in many ways, Richard says it's repair. Somebody else told me that, who happens to be part of New Orleans. And I think what I want to say, it's not a 4-letter word. It's a word, place you can think about differently. What am I talking about? Let's think about, how do we involve smaller developers? How do we make it possible for smaller developers to have there? How do we increase home ownership in this area? How do we prevent land grab by those who have lots of opportunity to grab the land? We have a big thing to do here, and that's why Hinge Neighbors is so important. And I can't stress enough how important this is to New York State. There's a book that's just coming out April 3rd by Megan, help me, Sean. Gimbel, thank you, who came to interview and talk with all the people in Rochester. We have a chapter in that book of Rochester, and she talks primarily about the problems that Texas is having with the Texas DOT. We have the fact that we've had mayoral support for this and state support. So enough.
Yeah, we'll continue the conversation, but unless I missed it, a lot of money is coming in and has been designated. So the Inner Loop North is, I think it's fair to presume, it will be filled in sometime within the next decade.
Oh, before that, I think that in 2 years, you'll see the design is there, and then they'll be breaking ground. So I think within 7 years, we'll have filled in. And so we added 6 acres to downtown with the east. Now we're going to add 24 acres to downtown. If that's not traumatic, I don't know what is.
Right. So I want to highlight Galin is an urbanist. She was educated as such, just moved her family after being selected in a competitive process to take over the helm from the Rochester Downtown Development Corporation. You're also the head of Partnership for Downtown Rochester. What is that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Richard. And thank you so much for having us all here today. It's a pleasure to be up here with the 3 of you and knowing the great work that you do to support revitalization in downtown. So I run the Rochester Downtown Development Corporation, but as Richard was saying, also the Partnership for Downtown Rochester. That was stood up in 2021 as an entity really intended to help drive private sector resources to revitalize the downtown core and provide marketing, promotion, placemaking, and activation of the downtown core and rock the riverway spaces as they came online. And as Richard mentioned, my background is in city planning. I went to NYU in New York City for a master's in urban planning. For me, this work is about cities and what makes them tick. I love thinking about that, thinking about the urban space and all that it can offer to its citizens. Downtowns are really unique and special places where people can come together. They can access more amenities and resources. They're also really important social fabric, right? They provide those opportunities for a variety of people to come together in a variety of spaces and to avail of a variety of opportunities. There are job centers for the regions that they exist within. That's a unique role that they fulfill in terms of the access to opportunity, especially in a place like Rochester, where we have our transit center right in downtown. So looking at downtown Rochester today, there are so many great things happening. It's an incredible place with an incredible history. But in the last year and a half, talking to people about what they think is working or not working, we really heard loud and clear that people want more from their downtown. They want more things to do and see, places to go, more events, better marketing. People are smart. They understand some of the struggles. They want better livability. You know, that includes beautification and activation of parks and public space, but it also includes mobility. So we heard a lot of those themes throughout the extensive public engagement that we did over the last year and a half or so. And so we're really committed to the work and the work of revitalizing downtown.
Thank you. We'll circle back and talk a little later about why it's important private sector drive these activities. So Jenna, thank you for bringing thousands of people into my neighborhood and creating parking issues in December.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. So people say, downtown, no one goes there. Well, you know,
185,000 people disagree.
tell us what Santa Claus brought from the North Pole. Yeah.
I'm proudly one of the co-owners of Rock Holiday Village. We run and operate in MLK Park for all of December. Uniquely, one of the only, not the only, but it's uncommon for a for-profit company. We run kind of like a nonprofit where most of what we bring in, we distribute back out to the community and obviously, you know, pay the expenses of the event. But we really can't do it without our sponsors to make it happen. And that is a unique situation to have these sponsors all so committed to our community to give to a for-profit company. I think that's an interesting concept. I get that a lot from other business people, like, how are you getting sponsors? You're not a not-for-profit. And I'm like, well, we kind of run like one. We're for the community, but we offer a lot of free things for the community, like free skating and free visits with Santa. And would you like me to get into, I think you'd asked me before, maybe on how I came up, where we came up with the idea.
Yeah.
I've been running events in Rochester for about, well, over 20 years. I know I only look 20, but it's been like 20 years that I've been running them. I was a baby when I started. I don't know if anyone ever went to an Alexander Street Festival back in the early 2000s, but you're welcome. Those were my first dabble at events. Got my, got all of my my experience in the jazz festival, which I've been doing for over 20 years. But I've been working for a lot of other people for a lot of years, taking on clients. And when in 2017, I went to Bryant Park in New York City for the holidays with my mom and a girlfriend and her mom. And I walked around with different eyes. I'd been to New York City a bunch of times, but just kind of looking at it differently. And I was like, why? We can do this. We can totally do this in Rochester. So I always say this really stupid story, but I came home and put a really terrible PowerPoint presentation together because I don't even know how to use my phone. And presented it to the city and was like, and Lovely Warren, who was the mayor at the time, was instrumental in making sure that this happened for us. She was the driving force behind saying, we need this for the same reasons you want to do it. What merges into that is, well, first of all, it was kind of a culmination of my own personal career to have something of my own and create something that I can create and have a legacy for here in Rochester. I'm
the biggest lover of the city. I've been running events and working and living in the city since all of my adult life. But I'm also a product of Rochester as a child, and like many of you, spent all of my Christmas at Midtown. Went up on Magic Mountain and saw Santa and got the little balloons and the kazoos and the breakfast at Santa. And having children of my own later in life, realized I really don't have something like that for my kids. We didn't have anything like that. And had been talking for years with the city special events department, like, how do we bring Santa back? Like, what do we have to do to get Santa back? We got to bring that whole nostalgia back so everyone can experience what we experienced as children. So it kind of all came together, and it just made sense. And when something is right, it's easy. And truly, that's what happened. After I went to the city, pulled in a couple of really key partners to help me to make it happen. And I think we had almost 100,000 people in our first year over like 13 days, which was crazy, which means that they want it. And trust me, thank you. I've done plenty of events or other things where people didn't come, and I don't look at those as failures. It was like, okay, I need to keep thinking about what the public wants. What does the community want? And so when you nail it, that they want it, then you just kind of run with that. So that's what we did. We're in our sixth, they'll be in our 6th year this year.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution to the community. And I've always pointed out to people, doing good doesn't require a 501c3. There are other structures, there are big corporations. I spent much of my life in startup world. All those companies, many of them successful, are nonprofits. As you're building a company, you often lose money. So it's just, I want to, dwelling in urban issues and interacting with government, I assume most people understand some of the things you're premising your activities on. Why don't we address the issue why government can't do this, and how you effectively interact with government, because all of you would consider the city your partners.
Right.
The thought experiment, city doing this on its own, doesn't work out very well. But
no. I think that we're trying to actually have people think differently. And sometimes the process of government is that it's sameness. That's part of the bureaucracy, because you have to treat everybody the same. So you get into the status quo, you sometimes get into the same processes, etc. What we learned when we interviewed a lot of people, we learned there is a process, and our job is to interrupt the process and to find out ways to actually bring people in to think differently. We were mentored quite a bit by the Urban Institute, and they were very helpful in helping us think about things differently. In my corporate life, I changed jobs in Citibank every 18 months because I was allowed to just say, go and figure this out. We don't know what to do with it. So it was and then I'd figure that one out, and they'd send me to another department, which I didn't know anything about. The first one was develop a testing thing for computers for this program that we're going to do. We didn't test it right, so what are we going to do? What the heck is that? And it's finding things that you have to just educate yourself and then go forward to find something, how to do this. So that's exactly what Sean and I have done, is really tried to figure out, how do you bring the government in to talk about this? How do we make sure that the voice of the people who are living in the neighborhoods is actually heard? And how do we reach out to have people do it? So we just help people do their PowerPoint. And we said, okay, who do you want to talk to? And so we would arrange it. And so therefore we sort of got people to do this. It's really about, and now we're trying to influence it. And you're not supposed to influence, they say, but I think that's part of it. It's how do you have something that you're going to think differently. So we said, okay, here's what we did on the east side. It's not all bad. It's not all good. So how do you take what's good, repeat it, build on it, and then what do you think is not so good, and then build on that. So so we've been very vocal about that, talking about it. and we don't always back down. I mean, people will say, oh, no, don't bother. But we've made ourselves on the technical advisory committee of the Inner Loop so that we could learn out what is going on. So then we could help educate people in the neighborhoods about what is happening, so that when they went to present their ideas to public meetings, et cetera, they knew more about what was going to happen and what was going to be presented. Normally, government says, okay, everybody come in this room here. You've got an hour. We're going to present to you. We're going to an hour here. We're going to meet here. And so we're going to talk for about 45 minutes. And then we're going to give you 15 minutes to talk about what you want. We decided we needed to change that. And so how do you do that? You say, well, we're going to go in. And so they had substantive discussions that could change the thinking of people. And we had a lot of, we sought out also partners that would do it. And we don't agree with everything, but we are presenting what people want. And so therefore, that's our job. So we're like community engagement, it's you done. And I have to bow to my daughter, because I wouldn't be doing this unless my daughter, who was also an urban planner, said, Mom, what the heck are you doing? You got to do something different. So that's why I got
Great.
involved.
Well, we all thank your
Yeah.
daughter, Suzanne. Oh, go ahead.
Continue. Yeah.
I think of two things in answer to your question. I think of possibilities and perspective. And the reality is we can all do more when we're working together, right? It's that old saying, the whole is greater than the sum of our parts. And partnerships, whether it's public sector and private sector working together or within the private sector, really allow that to be a reality. I think when it comes to the question of government and partnerships with the private sector, that perspective piece is really key as well, right? There's a higher level, just like Suzanne was saying, there's a higher level perspective that the government has to have that doesn't necessarily get into some of the nitty-gritty on the ground in specific areas. And a lot of what can happen with partnerships can alleviate that or address that or ensure that those challenges are being addressed and the opportunities are being realized in a more effective way.
Yeah, I just want, I'm a downtown resident, and I've seen this really magnificent resurgence of downtown. If we're going to attract and retain young people, that's essential. It's part of the zeitgeist. Young people want to be in a concentrated, dense environment, walkable and all. And particularly with the city, which has so much need in certain neighborhoods, it just seems like, I get it, like the city should not be draining resources from Market View Heights, the Crescent, or Bull's Head to now deliver more trash removal or services downtown. And you came here from DC. I mean, it seems quite natural that the private sector would rise up and organize as the downtown is reemerging. Right?
Sure. And just to address your point about the resurgence of downtowns, there's a study done by the International Downtown Association that showed that between 2000 and 2018, downtowns grew 25 percentage points more than the rest of the city, right? The trend that people want to be in downtowns, whether they're often on the younger side or empty nesters, that's a really palpable and true thing that we want to be able to lean into and to have our city benefit from in terms of the tax revenues that come back to the city of Rochester. Private sector organizing to help support areas is a very common thing. It happens all over the world, all sorts of organizations, whether they're partnerships or alliances or business improvement districts or associations. There's a variety of them out there, but they're very, very common indeed.
And this is, obviously, you have a good relationship with the city. I mean, yeah. So Jenna, I mean, I just want to let you know, she mentioned it, but I view you as perhaps someone who helps the trains show up on time at the Jazz Fest, right? You're like the quiet person behind.
I'm behind the curtain. I'm the
Okay.
guy behind the curtain.
Now Rock You're like, there are 2 Grand Slam home runs. There are other things you're involved with. Yeah, just tell us the importance of an individual coming up with these ideas and driving them, because I don't think Lovely Warren's or Malik Evans' administration would have had the same lineup I enjoy every year at Jazz Fest. So yeah.
I think this is just my opinion, but I think that the relationship that works the best between private and public, or private and specifically with our government, is when the government supports the private sector. So very simply stated, in like the most layman terms, and how it relates to me is, don't put the roadblocks in my way. When I need a permit, when I need to get the zoning done, when I need to find the engineer, help me and support me in those things. And that's exactly what they do. And they listen. And that, again, that's my experience with them, and very specifically with the special events office or the mayor's office. But when when we kind of all come together and collaborate and say, these are the things that we need, they answer, and they really do. I think we're really lucky. And one of the things I've noticed when I've dabbled in some other businesses in other, in suburbs around here, or even the couple times I've done it outside of the state, that's not the case everywhere else. They don't make it easy. I mean, we opened up an event venue in Penfield, really in Webster, and it took, I don't know, 15 phone calls just to get somebody to answer me to be able to sign a letter so I can get my liquor permit. If I call the special events office, they're like, well, what do you need? Well, let me run it up the chain. We'll get it to you. I get it in a day. So I think that support is what makes it successful. I'm actually, I think a success story that's important to relate to, and maybe we can take a page out of their book, is what's going on in Fairport. A lot of private sector business coming in. Fairport must be rolling out the red carpet for them, saying, what can we do to help you? And now look what they did. They created this environment that wasn't public, that wasn't done by the government. That was just a lot of private people saying, I'm going to open a business, let's all do it together. And I think collaboration is really important with that too. But I think that is, at least for me, the relationship, I think, that makes the private sector in my business successful, is that the government is fully supportive. And I'd like to mention too, because I hope everyone feels, I'm a big lover of the city and what they do for me, in all of our events and everything in general, but they just offered all of the CEAP applications free police services, fire services, and parking services for the foreseeable future, which, so a CEAP application, yes. So other cities, and again, if you look at other cities, and maybe you can speak to this, there is not a lot of other cities that sponsor events or sponsor things in their city and give that money back into those private sector spaces. And so the way our city does it is called a CEAP application, and it's a special events funding application. You apply for that funding, and in return, they get a sponsorship, whether it's in kind or monetary, and what you need to support you. The idea of the CEPA is not to always support you. It is to kind of jumpstart you 5-10 years, maybe something like that. And it might start going down, and then they start, they have a pool of money that's specific for this. Maybe it goes to someone else new that comes in once you become established. But that CEPA money goes to help fund these opportunities. And when you take away the police at $107 an hour per guy with 4-hour minimums, and you take away the fire marshals, which when you have events, and again, I can only speak for what I do, but when you have events, you tell them where you want it or what streets you want, and they come back and say, well, these are the cops you need, and this is the fire you need. You don't really get to say to them, well, I only want 2 cops today. They're like, no, this is what you're doing. And then you have to pay for it. It creates a division of equity. So you really have to have the means to be able to do that. And with them taking that out and the application process being equitable, they're going to open up the doors for a lot more opportunities for people to come in and run events because they can afford it now. So that's really great.
I hear an entrepreneur here. I've dwelled in the world of entrepreneurs for so, and it makes me think of all those people who might not succeed, who end up falling prey to accusing someone, external forces. Not everyone who does a startup or launches these ventures is going to succeed. Not every startup succeeds. Most don't. But you've all expressed a resilience. So before I open it up for Q&A, like, you've all been knocked down too. Yeah, what's your go-to when you get knocked down and you're frustrated? Like, do you have a Ouija board with the mayor?
We have a damn it, that's not going to happen.
Or like
I think, first of all, I agree with you. You have to develop relationships. I think one of the things that we're working with neighborhoods, working on an alley that we're trying to reactivate in the our between Weld and Woodard, and we and the person who's involved with that is David Riley, and he's also the head of the Interloop North project. So our neighbors were saying, well, why is he important to this project, the alleyway? And I said, because now he's in your neighborhood a lot more. He's walking through the neighborhood. He really sees the neighborhood. He knows the people here. We have to keep doing that. And that's really creating relationships with people instead of thinking that they're always bad. So and it really is an attitude of, well, the city's going to do what they're going to do. And what we have to do is say, well, we are in charge of it, and constantly keep people coming back and saying, no, we're really going to do this. So I believe we tried to meet, when we first started out, we tried to meet as many people as possible and have this. And right now they're saying, one person said, well, why are you doing this, Sean? And why are you doing this, Suzanne? This is a person in government. And he said, why don't, you can execute, you do this stuff. Why don't you give up this alleyway project and do and solve poverty?
Oh, God.
Well, we'd love to do that, but this is a step in the right direction. And I think it's really trying to show that you do modeling, and that's important too. If you do, you do a model and then you develop from the model. So.
Yeah, I think Jenna was the model in that sentence, right?
Uh-huh.
So I think really it's, a lot of this work, it's somewhat entrepreneurial. You're constantly thinking of ideas and constantly trying to get things off the ground, and some of them don't work and some do, but it's about the work and it's about the outcomes and really just centering yourself in that and finding great partners to work with and to make beautiful things happen with.
In entrepreneur speak, startup world, we call it pivot, and you've evolved. The whole initiative has evolved, and you've recently gone through a pivot, and you're still emboldened to continue developing downtown, right?
Sure. So I would say we're really digging into the great work that we've already been doing. We've been active in marketing and events and a number of other areas, and working to expand on that with additional fundraising to be able to drive towards the welcoming, thriving, and inclusive downtown that we know people want.
Jenna, what's your go-to beverage at night when you have a frustrating day? Yeah.
Grace, who works with me over here, is laughing because I don't drink.
All right.
My past life was in bars and restaurants, and I think I did enough of that in my 20s to last me a lifetime. So I'm done. Sometimes I wish I did though.
So go ahead, Suzanne.
No, yeah, I drew a bourbon. Thank you. I think that. Well, I think we had a little discussion when we were talking about this, and we've gotten to know each other a little bit, and I think what it really truly tells me is that all of us, we're so busy in our own circles, and this is what happens in business as well, that we really can reach out and learn from each other and really develop more partnerships. And I think we can create our own silos. And I think in downtown, there's so many people involved in doing this. How do we work together so we're not wasting resources? That's a thing that I think that we could all work on.
Well, RocGrowth is here to facilitate that. So we have time for several questions depending on the length of the answers. So if anyone has a question, I continue questioning myself. We have one hand up. Anyone else? I want to see. We have three. Okay. Now we have four. Now let's attempt to get three, maybe four. So I saw the first hand went up. Martin. Yeah. Hold on.
Thanks, Sean.
Hello. To me, the downtown problem that we're not talking about is the west side of downtown. So west side of downtown is a bit of a ghost town right now. And I'm curious about where's the status with Constellation Brands and their move there, and how is that affecting private investment around that area? So you used to be a lot of small little walk-in restaurants for lunches and stuff, and I'm not seeing that.
It won't be fed into the recording. By the way, we are recording this, so it will be posted, and we have almost 20 participants by Zoom. So it's important we use this mic. It feeds into the system. Thank you.
So the question I heard was about the west side of downtown and what's happening over there and when Constellation is coming in. So Constellation has actually shared that their move-in date will be June 4th. So they will be moving in and opening on that date with their 300 odd employees that will be headquartered there at the new location right on the river. In terms of the west side of downtown, you know, it is in a stage where it is experiencing a particularly high level of vacancy. In the downtown core, generally, the area that we focus on, predominantly the traditional inner loop, plus or minus a couple of blocks, depending on where you are. There's a lot of office vacancy. It's an area that thankfully is evolving into more of a mixed use area. We have about 10,000 residents today, and that is great. But predominantly, at least 75% of the built space is commercial office space, and that is struggling in certain pockets. And you definitely see that west of the river. There is, I know, some moves. For one, there's a historic district that is coming in for the Four Corners area that should provide some good incentives in terms of historic tax credits to reposition some of the larger buildings that are having a tougher time there. And it will also support the rehab of Andrews Terrace. So there's some good moves happening, but yes, it's certainly been an area that's been hard hit by the pandemic and the post-pandemic office vacancy in downtown.
I want to highlight, it took a long time for the downtown to get to where it was, the disinvestment and the challenges. And it does take a little while. This doesn't happen overnight, right? So we have, is that David who wanted to ask a question? Dave, we have the notable journalist, David K. Johnson, in our presence right now. I just feel very honored. Thank you.
It strikes me that there are two issues I hope that we discuss more in the future that relate to what you've been talking about, the filling in of the north side of the loop and downtown. One will raise costs but throw off large benefits. One will lower costs and throw off much larger benefits. So the first one is focusing on
David,
organize.
is there a question?
Support, yeah. How to,
Okay.
One is, what are you
Not
going
just-
to do to organize support to get the business improvement district revived? How to get broad support for that and take away the fears of people who, I've had people tell me, my rent's going to go up double, who are just badly informed. And the second one, which none of you have brought up, but is the single most valuable economic development tool for Rochester, is getting rid of Iberdrola.
Well, I heard the question regarding, yeah, oh, okay, Jenna could go. That's a topic for a future one, all right?
I just want to point out that Galin is fairly new to Rochester and has taken on some pretty big shoes to fill and taken on a big project right from the get-go when she walked in. And she's worked really hard. We happen to work together. I run an event series for our DDC, and she's worked really hard to learn about our city. And I think we're a lot of diehard, longtime Rochester residents. So bringing in someone from the outside, she's really done her homework and she's been working hard. And even with a pivot that she might have to make right now, I think she's still going to show and prove that our DDC can be a big player in what the revitalization's, what's going to happen in the future, regardless of where that comes from or who's behind it or how it happens. We're still going to make it happen because that's what we do here. And I think Galen's the epitome of that.
Thank you, Jenna. And thank you for your question and your commentary. Just to take the first part head on, we definitely took great stock in the realities on the ground and what is possible and likely right now. And now just did not seem to be the right time for a business improvement district. So we're not pursuing that currently. We don't have plans to pursue it or revive it, but it's not never, it's just not now for us.
Ben, do you want to shout? Or here, Ray, we're giving Ray a workout here. Okay.
Hi, my name is Ben. I have a business downtown. I've been here for a couple years, and I have two questions about this. One of the biggest problems I see with downtown is marketing downtown, what's happening, especially around things like Jazz Fest, etc. People just don't know when it happens or they get confused about it. So I see a lot of people complain about they just didn't know this stuff was happening. So better ways to market what's happening downtown would be great. Like I didn't even know Jazz Fest was happening until I saw it out my window. I mean, I was like, oh, that's today.
And I'm going to have to request you ask a question.
Yeah. So my question is, how can we improve marketing that? And then the second thing is, what kind of questions, or how should we answer people that are questioning about, is it safe to come downtown? Because I have a lot of parents that go, I don't want to come downtown with my kids. And I'm like, why? I mean, like, what are you afraid of? So yeah, that's my two questions.
I'm curious to learn what business you run. I think. Oh yeah. Great, thank you. Marketing is certainly something we heard, as I mentioned earlier, loud and clear, that people see as an area of opportunity for downtown. It's something that we're committed to and we're digging in to expand our support of. There's a couple different partnerships and tools that we're working on for that. We have our own downtown event listing, but we know cities also working on something. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag for them, but generally utilizing all the tools at our disposal and better getting out there and in front of people in terms of promotion. Jenna can probably respond to Jazz Fest directly. But to the second part of your question, just to respond to that before I give the mic over, perception is a big challenge for downtown. It's not that there aren't safety challenges. There are also safety challenges, but people perceive it to be worse than it is. And combating that and dealing with that is something that we all have to try and overcome. And part of it, honestly, is just how we expect urban environments to be and what makes us feel more comfortable in cities, and that's seeing more life around us. It's not necessarily an accurate equation, but we often assume if there are more people around us, it's going to be a safer setting. And so part of the work is really getting more people and breathing more life into more pockets of downtown.
I think for marketing, the information's out there, but it's funny that you say this because I had an email coming today. They were like, we didn't know that it was something else. Like we didn't know where. And I think for me, I'm in a bubble. So I'm like, how can you not know? Like people from, Europe know about Jazz Festival. How do you know what I mean? Also, I send out a neighborhood notification. So if I can throw a stone to your house, you're getting something in the mail telling you when it is. But it's out there. There's a city special, there's a major special events website. There's the RDDC has an events page, and it's even more than that. There's housing and there's like other resources. And then of course, Visit Rock does a great job, and it's very well organized information. Maybe the hurdle is, how do we get people to understand that those are the places you can go to, because it is there. So I don't know the answer to that. I'm not a marketing.
So let me wrap up. We're done with Q&A. You get the final word. No.
I would just want to say about.
I want to adhere to time. So no, you have the floor. Yeah.
Safety. I live downtown. I walk downtown. I walk by myself downtown. I walked here. I think that part of that is the press too. Also, it's more fun to talk about those people in the city or whatever. It's perception. But I think that we don't do a very good job about talking about that, including myself. And I think that every time we have to say, yeah, there are issues. Sometimes I get scared, but I got scared and I was robbed when I was in the suburbs, not in the city. So I think that we have to talk about that as well. And I think that I walk on Wells Street. I walk on Woodward Street. I walk by myself. And if you have to be there, you have to go out. You have to talk to people. And I think what it is talking, just bringing a neighbor in. Part of it is if we take walks everywhere and we invite people to walk with us, and I will tell you that there are many people in my neighborhood who have never gone across the inner loop to the Weld Street, which is going to be, it's downtown. And we need to be able to do that more often. I think that even people who live downtown have fears, and we have to get out of those fears. Again, it is about having more people around, but it is really also our own state of mind. And I think we need to do a lot more op-eds to say, no, more social media to talk about the positive, because the negative is the only thing people hear about, because that's what Mr. Trump has done so well. So, sorry.
So this is all. So I just wanted to say, this is not unique to Rochester. The inner loop, the urban renewal issue was not unique to Rochester. So other cities face this. One of the points I'm attempting to make is we can potentially one day be among the highest and most respected small cities. And this is the opportunity. So in case you missed the news, there is an eclipse. Does everyone know that? So I want these three individuals not to be blinded. And RocGrowth would like to gift you some really fancy, eclipse glasses. Thank you. Woohoo! Hold on. Oh, we have one more gift before I close up with my thank yous. Oh my God, Mary and Tom are, the most generous, kind, considerate people. But Mary Myers, thank you.
Just to give you a sense of
I
my
know.
history, my name is
Unofficial
Mary Juba
Myers.
Champagne Myers. And if you want to talk to me about any of those parts of my life, feel free, because that's the kind of organization these people have founded and grounded, is where you walk up to people and say, who are you? What's your story? And find each other. But since it's Women's History Month, and we've got 3 busy people, and it's a holiday weekend, I decided that they needed flowers today. So please, if you would share them.
Thank you. Suzanne, Galin, woo, Galin,
And if
Jenna.
you come to RocGrowth Coffee, Tom and I, he's sometimes my husband, and sometimes I'm his staff, sometimes he's mine, but there's always chocolate.
Thank you. So again, we're a community of 3,000. Those of you who register who might not be on our email list, I think by default you'll join our email list. If you don't want to receive emails, you just unsubscribe. We have almost 2,000 social media followers. You're part of the community. If anyone wants to get involved, we have weekly Tuesday Zoom calls. I always invite interested parties to join. Ray has been there, a bunch of you. Mike was in on this week's call. And the only rule is that you can't just come up with ideas. If you have an idea, you have to figure out how to use our help to get it done. All right? So Paul Tracy has been with us from the start in Vision Productions. Thank you. Thank you, buddy. And we have a newer addition to our virtual team, Wes, who's staffing the bar there. Yeah. Unfortunately, in our country, in the hospitality industry, they rely on tips. We don't provide living wages necessarily. So just consider that for a moment when you order something. And we also have Peter Landers, who is one of the partners in this building. And thank you. And I've known Peter for years. Thank you very much for your generosity in allowing us to use this space. We also have, I'm not sure if Bill Pierce is here from Community Design Center. They've supported this event and pushed it out to their lists. So we have a relatively large number of architects, I think, in this room tonight, and people who care about urban design. I love architects personally. And our team, the group that meets every Tuesday regularly, is Tom Myers in the back, and we have Chris Cooley. You can see by their hoodies. We have the man behind the lens over there, Todd Fleming, Carolyn Spencer. Mike Thaney is here, flying solo tonight and enjoying an evening without his 2 children and wife. I don't know what he had to give in exchange. And we have Max Irwin as well. So thank you. Our next event is April 4th, and that is what we call First Thursday Creative Collisions. And we meet at the Fatty Beer, which is right there across the street from the entrance of our wonderful, strong museum, the National Museum of Play. Steve Dubnik was here, I think. Thank you, man. He was, he took off. All right. And then we have RocGrowth Coffee, which is the morning event for those where they prefer morning events. And that's April 18th at Bar Bantam. All these events are free, by the way, and that's 8 to 9:30 a.m. And then we're producing a new event in partnership with Peter Platt, who is creating something called RocGrowth Digital. And there'll be an event Tuesday for the digital marketing community. We're attempting to focus on the underrepresented, the sole proprietors, not people from the big agencies, but the creative class that relies on digital marketing in various ways. So it's going to be a meetup, a social at Leela's, the restaurant at Hampton, the new Hampton Inn. Again, right near the Strong. I'm done. And I'm sorry to have kept you a little late, but enjoy.